she's going to leave. So I think what we'll do is we're each assigned some questions. We'll just read them and then answer them.
Okay, I'll start. The first question is, will there be a new process or similar process to handling DFEH complaints? It will be the same process that DFEH has right now. Basically, individuals can file a complaint with us, conduct intake, we'll do the investigation. It's the same process. I don't intend on changing that process. So if you have questions about that, you can go on our website and study our complaint process very carefully. Also, individuals may file an immediate right to sue by going online, so that's also possible. Second question, currently DFEH expects responses in 30 days. Will DFEH automatically allow 90 days to respond to complaints as allowed by Title II? No, if it's 30 days, it's 30 days for everybody, although there are circumstances which would warrant an extension of that time. Third question. DFEH, as a general rule, has state departments conduct investigations re-discrimination. The purpose of filing with SPB is when the complaint is against a high-level official within the State Department. Will DFEH conduct these investigations or have State Departments? There are complaints lodged against employers as well as managers or supervisors or the heads of those organizations, so there's no reason why these complaints cannot be filed with the DFEH. And we will properly conduct the investigation, conciliate or mediate them, or file a prosecution.
I'm going to go next. If you could just stay, because I have a number of ones that touch on discrimination also, but I think they're more appropriate for me to answer. But Phyllis, you might want to chime in, so if you can just hang on a couple more minutes. So it says the reorg proposes complaints of discrimination alleging race and gender will be processed by DFEH. What about other complaints alleging other types of discrimination? So all complaints of discrimination alleging all the different bases under the FEHA will be handled by DFEH, so national origin, age, sexual orientation, etc. I think it was just maybe a shorthand in the actual consolidation proposal. Will state departments still be required to have an EEO officer that reports directly to the department director or the highest ranking authority? Of course, as you know, if you work in an EEO office, we have issued a few pinkies on this issue, and it is extremely important for that to remain the same. And so we will, of course, recommend to the CalHR director that that relationship not change, that the EEO officer in each department must report directly to the director. Who handles appeals of discrimination complaints, and what happens to reasonable accommodation denials that SPB appeals heard? So reasonable accommodation complaints will, those are disability discrimination complaints, and those will go, with DFEH. What we will retain at SPB is when a discrimination complaint is part of an adverse action. Okay, so where they're intertwined, then the employee will have the same, both dual avenues that they have currently. They can litigate that through us in their adverse action appeal, and they will also have an independent right to go file with DFEH on just their discrimination complaint. This is the same question, and that's it for the discrimination question. So thank you, Phyllis.
Thank you very much.
And I have one other question that isn't related to discrimination. The 3-rank pilot, what will happen to the pilot? And then also departments need tools to ensure consistent exams. This should stay with SPB as part of the responsibility of the merit system. Currently, fairness for applicants is a concern. So the first one is the 3-ranks pilot. The current status of the 3-ranks pilot, as you know, is that the board is looking at evaluating that pilot to see if it has been successful. We're in the process of doing that now. We will report back to the board probably around November, sometime in November, and the board will then make a decision whether to adopt that as a permanent part of the process or modify it or abolish it entirely. So as far as HR Mod's involvement in that process, they did what they were meant to do, and now it's really in the board's hands. And then the department tools to ensure consistent exams and the suggestion that the exam functions stay with the board. This was one of the big concerns that the board expressed initially when approached with this consolidation plan. And the way, because as you know, in the Constitution, the board administers the civil service system. So the question is, does that mean that the board has to do the day-to-day assembling of exams and administering the exam process and validating the exams, or does it mean something else? And what we have made sure of is that we will have an audit function. So instead of us spending time doing individual exams, constructing them, validating them, we will now be able to direct our resources on doing audits of departments, because the majority of the exam function is already delegated to the departments. Some departments pay us to do it for them. We also do, of course, the service-wide exams. But for the most part, departments are doing those exams on their own. Without an effective audit function, we aren't really able to monitor how those exams are being conducted and whether the departments are complying with all of the rules. So really the key, one of the big factors in the board supporting this consolidation was a guarantee that we would have an audit function and a robust audit function so that we can, on a cyclical basis, go around to departments and audit their merit system processes. And we envision doing, everybody would be audited every 3 to 5 years is what we're looking at. So that handles my questions. Carol, did you have any assigned? Alvin, no?
Nope.
Howard?
I'm next. One question, it's a comment. CDCR's matrix includes aggravating and mitigating factors to account for unique individual case factors. The question is, does your proposed matrix also include aggravating and mitigating or similarly tilted factors? First, let me make absolutely clear that we don't have a matrix that's developed. We will be working on that, but we don't have a proposed matrices right now. That is all in the developmental stage and something that we'll be working on as we go along. The elements of the answer to the question are contained in the question itself. Yes, whatever matrix is developed or matrices that are developed will, of course, take into account both aggravating factors and mitigating factors, and how those are displayed or explained in the matrices is still up for discussion and consideration. But of course, I think it got back to what Barbara Brescher was asking and what others have pointed out, that there are variations. It's not always black and white. There are multiple shades of gray, and a broad category of discipline may be mitigated or may be aggravated by special, unique factors given in a specific case, and we'll have to account for that and how to score that, for lack of better description, in our matrices.
I'd like to tag on just a little bit to what Howard said, because I have heard quite a few concerns over the matrix, and I think that probably the best thing that will come of this is that we ask people who are interested in this to come in and help us do this. I don't know that really matrix is the right word. Maybe a guideline is the right word. I don't know today what it will look like. We just know the goal. The goal is to provide a more fair system of discipline. And then again, just to restate it, the board itself is not affected by this matrix or this guideline. They take it into consideration, and then the board does whatever the board feels is the appropriate action. So we will be reaching out. We've got over a year really to develop this matrix. CalHR won't exist for a year. I would like to hear from people who want to be involved, who want to help us develop this matrix or guideline, or convince us that it's the wrong way to go. But we really need some help with this. The inconsistency that I talked about earlier today is a real one. And, that really shouldn't be, that kind of disparity shouldn't exist between our departments. That's not how we want to treat our employees. And I think it's critical in these days when public officials aren't being held in the highest esteem that we treat them all fairly and appropriately. So again, that's my call to action. If anyone's interested, we will have Julie's contact information at the end here. She'll give it to you again. And be sure and tell us you're interested. The other thing I want to say is this is a very fluid process, the reorganization is, and it's extremely critical that if you're enthused about something, that you offer us your services. And with that, I'll go to the very first card that I have because it's exactly what I was talking about. This person says they want to know about what revitalization of the state's employee development program means. And I'm not going to read the whole thing because the person wrote on both